Edited it out. There we go.
Okay, now we're spinning.
You
Put it,
wanna
put it in the hat band. Oh, let's not use your billfold. I'll just use some grass or something. It doesn't have to be right until we're ready to roll. We'll try not to make snide comments. That may be the hard one. There we go. That looks like pretty good.
Oh, it's already
It's all recording. We're just gonna
Edit it out later.
use up one of 100,000 lives on that flash. Time. They'll probably miss it. No, they may make it on time. Wear it just fine. Show that where they are.
Thanks, buddy. So, yeah, what is it? Sour cream?
Okay. They're within striking distance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome to Chautauqua. It's a beautiful day. This is a beautiful spot. We're here to rededicate this bench that's was placed here after Charles Sawtelle died. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the genesis of the bench itself and the story of how it got here. And then a few other people are going to speak, including the folks who restored the bench recently and kind of brought it back to its original vigor. And maybe we'll play a couple songs, but I'm really glad you all could be here. This wasn't a highly promoted or we don't want to make a big splash, but it's momentous in its own way, and it's poignant, especially for those of us who know and love Charles. So the reason why this bench is here on this particular site is that it's always, it's unfathomable really to imagine outliving one of your kids. And after Charles died, his parents were really shaken. They were part of our world and our lives, Dan and Polly. And Charles's wishes were that his ashes be spread in the ocean off the coast of Oahu in Hawaii, which is one of his favorite places. He had a favorite beach. And his mother was thinking, man, I wish there was a place. We're 95 years old, and we're never going to go there and sort of share that experience with Charles and Charles's memory. Is there a place here in Colorado where we could go and kind of think about Charles and remember Charles? And Helen and I started going out to dinner once a month with Dan and Polly just to kind of connect with them. And at one point I mentioned Chautauqua as a sort of a special place for Hot Rize because we played here a lot, and Boulder was our base. So Dan and Polly loved that idea if we could find a place at Chautauqua where they could come and remember Charles. So that began the journey. The next phase was to talk to Chautauqua, and this is a complicated environment. What we are witnessing right now is the confluence of the city of Boulder and the nonprofit that is Chautauqua itself, and there's overlapping sort of authority around different things. But somehow or other, we got the loose approval to create something in Charles's honor on the grounds of Chautauqua. So then in February, we came up here with Charles's parents and we walked around. And Polly, we walked in all kinds of different places and locations. She came up onto this hill and she said, just as Brigham Young had said, this is the place. And she got up here and she said, this is it, this is the place. And so then we began the process of figuring out, okay, what are we gonna put there? And what's it gonna look like? And so our friend Henry Beer helped us design this round platform. We found stonemasons and cement contractors, and then we knew we wanted to put a bench here that people could sit and think about Charles. We wanted to find a bench where people could sit and play music together. So the idea of a half-circle bench was something we thought would be really great. We started looking in catalogs for benches. There are bench catalogs, who knew? So we looked in some bench catalogs and we found this perfect one that's like a half circle and it looked just right and it was kind of elegant, old-fashioned, and classic. And coincidentally, the name of that model was St. Charles, the St. Charles Bench. So we ordered the St. Charles Bench, and we found the stonemason and the contractor to pour the concrete. And then we started just riffing about what else would be special. One of the things we thought of, and you'll see when you come up here later, is that we contracted with a foundry up in Fort Collins to create some bronze flat picks that were oversized. That the idea was we'd set them in the concrete so they would look like scattered leaves on the slab, but they would be in the shape of big flat picks. So that was a cool concept. One of the concepts that was less cool involved Charles's astrological sign of Virgo, which at the 11th hour, someone without authority decided to imprint Charles's constellation Virgo in here. So if you're ever wondered about what these crazy lines are on the slab, that's what that is. It's the constellation Virgo, which we think we could have done just fine without. But there it is. Anyway, so the happy part of it is that Dan and Polly's wishes were fulfilled, that Chautauqua was willing and the city of Boulder was willing to work after some negotiations to agree to put this here. One of their concerns was they didn't want it to be too funereal. Some of you may remember that there's a bench down by the Playhouse that's commemorating John Benet Ramsey, which is slightly funereal. And so they were trying to keep it light and not too heavy. So Pete and Tim and I got together and started thinking about Charlesisms. There are a lot of Charlesisms. Charles Sawtelle, born in 1946, was a absolute. He was awake as a human being. He noticed stuff. He noticed language. He had a great visual eye. He was a great collector of objects of beauty, including instruments. He had a great sense of humor. And if you ever asked him for a business card, he would happily say, so if you say, "Hey, Charles, do you have a card?" He'd say, "Yeah, sure." And he'd reach in his pocket and he'd say, here it is. It would just say, "Charles Sawtelle, expert." No phone number, no address, nothing else. It just said, "Charles Sawtelle, expert." Because he was, in fact, expert at so many things. He knew about sound, he knew about art, he knew about mechanics, he knew about all these things that you wouldn't expect him to be expert about. And he was not shy sharing his expertise. But in any event, we thought about what are some great Charles-isms that we could put on the bench that wouldn't be somber. And never eat anything blue didn't make the cut. And there were a few other things that were just like, I don't think that's right. But we settled on one, which was never turn anything all the way up. And that seemed like not only a great Charlesism, that was kind of, sort of lighthearted, but it also kind of fit with the Chautauqua ethos. That here there's a lot of this big old acoustic barn behind us where we all play, and there's something that anybody who's ever played at Chautauqua, if you've ever performed at Chautauqua, you know that if you're mixing sound in there, it sounds worse if you turn it up. It actually sounds better if you turn the PA down a little bit, because that's the nature of this crazy wooden box that's up there. Anyway, so we settled on that phrase, never turn anything all the way up. During the time that we placed the bench and before we got the back finished with Charles's slogan and the attribution, Charles's parents passed away. So they did get a chance to come up here and see the bench and see the spot that Polly had chosen and to think about Charles, as we all did. But it wasn't until about maybe 6 months later that the back of the bench was installed with Charles's dates and his Charlesism. And anyway, so this is Charles died in 1999. So that's a while ago. And so 22 years ago, actually in September, no, is that right? March, yeah. So a little more than 22 years ago. And so his parents never got to see the completed project, but they certainly got to see this spot. And most people who come up here now, these many years later, don't know anything about Charles. They don't know who it is. Many of them don't know anything about Hot Rise. That's fine. The bench is here. It's just a thing. We see them when we're sitting on the porch. They're just up here hanging out with their families, enjoying this incredible vista. and this beautiful bench. Well, the bench has been outside for all these years. And recently, some volunteers came forward and they offered to resuscitate the bench, give it a new lease on life, because it needed some help, it needed some attention. And that was a longer process than I think they imagined it was going to be when they first came up with the idea. But they did a great job. And here to tell you about that process is Scott, who's he and his buddies did the whole thing. Where, are you here, Scott?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so I was just, we were staying here at Chautauqua last February, I guess it was, and I didn't really even know about the bench, but I was walking my dog and we found the bench out here one night. I was actually looking for places to play music with friends, and we found it, and I contacted Pete and just asked him for some backstory, and he put me in touch with Nick. They were super encouraging and helpful, and we contacted the Chautauqua folks, Jeff and his team. They were great. Let us drag it in the back of the auditorium where it would at least get dry. It wasn't exactly warm in there in February or March, but yeah, we got out the sanders and just started sanding, and like Nick said, it was a lot more work than we expected. There was some wood that needed to be replaced, and but got a bunch of my picking buddies up here. I see some here now, Lindsay and Mike and a bunch of guys, and we'd go in there and sand, and then we'd play music, and then we'd sand some more. And there was one thing about the saying, you know, never turn anything all the way up. It's not super rock and roll. You think of like, and we're in there sanding, and I said, well, heck with Charles, I'm turning this sander up to 11. And next thing you know, I'd melted the sanding head, so he was right. But yeah, it's been a great process. It's been great to just think a lot about Charles and listen to a lot of his music and talk to some of his old friends and learn more about him. And I've always been a longtime fan, so it's been a great honor and a labor of love for me. And really, it's also been a great opportunity to collect and gather with friends and play music and make some memories. So I wouldn't hesitate to do it again if I had another opportunity. So maybe 10 years from now we'll do it again. That's about all. Thanks for coming. I guess we should we unveil the bench? Sorry.
Need a drum roll.
All right, I think
Reveal it. Let the world see your hard work.
Are we on here? Yes. Boy, you're going to enjoy watching this when we're looking at the bench. Do you have a flat?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not only do I have a-
Reach
These
down.
ones in the pavement are just too big.
This is one of Charles's picks.
Then
And anybody who wants one can have one. I have extras.
did you hear that? If somebody, Charles owns quite a few picks, and we take good care of them, in fact. So Nick has a few extras, and so he will dispense some of those. Now, I'm going to do a couple of things, just a quick little tribute sort of thing, and then a song I wrote for Charles a while ago. So Charles, we had a wonderful couple of different memorials for him, one right at the Boulder Theater shortly after he passed, and then another one here at Chautauqua with quite a few great guest artists that had played with Charles. And at one of those, I wrote some stuff, and it was a lot longer, so I just took a few of those things out of what I said 22 years ago. When any great musician dies, a unique voice is stilled, and many people grieve the loss of a respected talent. Sometimes a musician may be able to touch people in a bigger way. Charles Sawtelle, known as the Bluegrass Mystery, was able to touch people quite deeply, though he rarely spoke on stage and was mostly quite shy off stage. People sensed his uniqueness, his good heart, his sincerity, and as a musician, not just his masterful technique and tone, but the way he conveyed his feeling for music. Charles's instinct was to be a friend to musicians, and he extended himself to a lot of people. So he's still a part of a lot of us. And this song just came out at one point, so I'm gonna do what I can to render it. Is that too much for the guitar? Okay. I keep on wanting to have a conversation with you, but you're gone now from this earth, and there's nothing I can do. I long to hear your voice and the magic of your guitar. Sometimes I wonder, are you living on a distant star? Down here on earth, is there anything I can find to bring a piece of you back to me and treasures left behind? I used to love to watch your hands as they lay upon the strings, and I guess they'd love it too, and the way you'd make them sing. I can put a record on and hear that song again. And if I close my eyes, I can travel back to then. Oh, here on earth, is there anything I can find to bring a piece of you back to me, treasures left behind? A lot of us who knew Charles well, he's definitely living in us. I keep getting reminded of things that he would comment about, and I sometimes tell people things that I think Charles would have told them if he were around, so I feel sometimes like I'm a proxy for him. I'm not sure, Tim, would you like to bring some words up for us? Or a song or anything?
I just want to say Charles was one of these guys who was just so open. He was very shy, like Nick said, and yet he would have time for you if you approached him. At the festivals, you know, we'd show up and he'd say, "I can't wait to get around and see, you know, what's going on at the Bluegrass Festival." We'd pull into the park there, and he said, let's go," and we'd walk around, and then 10-15 minutes later he'd be back on the bus. He'd say, "God, people are just bugging the hell out of me." But the people that he met and took some time with, which was quite a few, time after time, they would report later that he was one of their best friends. And she just had this direct, I mean, he had his idiosyncratic stuff, and he was easily, with his Virgo, triple Virgo sign, he was maybe a little bit more fastidious about things than other people are. But there was something about him that was so open, and he just opened up to you, and you were one of his. He was one of your best friends. That's all I have to say about it, really. I mean, he played some amazing music. He helped me so much. We should sing something together. Yeah. He was always the guy that, you know, if you needed advice on anything, you know, he would say, "Well, you know, that'd be a good guitar for you, but let's look around for another one." And he would say, you know, the right guitar will come to you, and he would sort of facilitate that by keeping his eyes open. Same thing with a car, you know. He said, "I know when a car will come to me. I need a new car, but I don't know what it's going to be." and he wouldn't necessarily pick it out himself. It would just sort of present itself, and then he would use that car.
Yeah. You'd say, just, you don't have to go look for things. You just have to be clear about what you're looking for, and then that stuff will find you. That was think what you done, B? You wanted that? Sure. Is it true that I've lost you? Am I not the only one? After all this pain and sorrow, darling, think of what you've done. Heart to heart, dear, how I missed you, like the flowers need to do. Loving you has been my lifeline. I can't believe we're really through. Is it true that I've lost you? Am I not the only one? After all this pain and sorrow, darling, think of what you've done. I go back to old Virginia, where the mountains meet the sky. In those hills I learned to love you. Let me stay till I die. Is it true that I've lost you? Am I not the only one? After all this pain and sorrow, darling, think of what you've done. Is it true that I've lost you? Am I not the only one? After all this pain and sorrow, darling, think of what you've done.
We love you, Charles. That's your song.
So you guys, like I said, we've got some of Charles's flat picks. Anybody wants to get a souvenir of this event, I'm happy to share some of those flat picks with you guys. Come on up and check out the bench. I know there's going to be some music made after a little while. I really appreciate you all coming. This mic doesn't feedback as much. Hey, check, is this one on too?
Yeah.
I really appreciate you all coming, and whenever you're up here, tell a story. Share the story, keep the history of the bench going, because people won't know, people won't remember. We'll be gone eventually too, and people say, who the hell was Charles Sawtelle? What? Hot what? So keep it going as you can, and come on up and check it out, and thanks so much for coming out for this reopening, and thanks to Scott and his buddies for putting so much time and effort into fixing this bench up and giving it a new lease on life. Thank you.
I'll give it a moment to let things settle. Better record too long than not enough. I will eventually. Better to record too long than not enough. Something we've both learned, I'm sure. I hope Scott might want to get a guitar pick for David Hamill. I bet he'd appreciate that. For Elliot. Yep. These are people going up. All right, I think